Well, a lot of people ask me, who do you think will become the next world champion from India, like our great Vishy Anand? And while Vidit, Harikrishna, Adiban, Sethuraman, so many stars are right there at the top and, trying their best to become the world champions, I think there is clearly a lot of promise in the next generation in Indian chess. This generation includes guys like Nihal Sareen, Pragnananda, Gukesh, and one more young talent about whom we are going to talk in this video. It's none other than Raunak Sadhwani. Now, the reason for recording this video is that at the recent online tournament called Title Tuesday, Raunak beat Fabiano Caruana, world number 2. Now, Raunak is just 14 years old. He lives in Nagpur. He's the 65th Grandmaster of India. And he was facing Fabiano Caruana in the quarterfinals of that event. And he managed to stun the world number 2 with some brilliant chess, which we are going to discuss. Now, Raunak actually was in the news a few years ago already in 2018 when in the first round of Isle of Man 2018, he put Vishy Anand under a lot of stress. Actually, Anand was completely losing that game and then he came back to hold, not just hold, but beat Raunak. But already at that point, Vishy had said that this boy has something special in him. So let's go to the board and try to analyze about this game, try to understand how Raunak was able to put a lot of pressure on Fabi. Now Raunak is black here, so you will be thinking from black side, but I will be asking you questions for both of them, and I have prepared a quiz for you. It's a 13 points quiz here, so you need to guess the right move on 13 occasions, and then at the end of the video you can let me know how well you fared by putting your score in the comment section below. So good to go, let's begin. Now Raunak with the black pieces, Fabi opened the game with d4, f5. The Dutch defense is part of Raunak's repertoire. He likes to play fighting chess. Knight to c3, knight f6, and bishop to g5. Now, knight c3, this move against the Dutch is kind of an aggressive move because usually you want to place your pawn on c4. Once you play knight c3, you're looking for more of piece play rather than pawn play. Bishop g5, and Raunak played the move d5, completely logical because he doesn't want white to play e4 easily in the position. e3, and now came a slightly surprising move, bishop to e6. Usually when you take up this stone wall structure, you want to put your pawn on e6, pawn on c6. So a very normal variation would have been e6, knight to f3, bishop e7, bishop d3, castles, and knight to e4. This would have been normal to play, and then white usually will go knight e2 and try to play c4 here, and so on. Black will be solid, he'll play c6, knight d7, knight f6, and the game continues. But Raunak played this move bishop e6. It's kind of interesting. He wants to play his knight to d7 and then develop his bishop from g7 by playing g6. Bishop d3, knight d7, knight f3, and now came the move g6. Now Caruana here thought of an interesting idea. He said that black is slightly uncoordinated, so I'm going to play the move h4. He just pushed, and now h5 starts becoming a threat in many of the lines. First Raunak developed bg7 and now knight e2. The point is to go knight f4, and already the youngster had to be very careful. For example, if you play the natural move castles, you can see that there's a clear problem here. Knight to f4 attacks the bishop on e6. The bishop has to move, and now comes h5, and this is what would be a big nightmare for the black player, because say after something like gh, bishop f5 is winning, and if you take knight into h5, Then knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop f5, and I think white is completely better. Raunak was switched on. He is a staunch defender. He played the move knight to h5. He said, I'm going to stop my opponent from coming to f4. Fabi nonetheless played knight f4. He took, bishop takes, and now once again the threat of h5 has been created in the position. If you were to play a move like knight f6, then still h5 is something that has to be looked into, because after knight into h5, you have the very typical sacrifice rook h5, gh5, and knight g5, when now the queen is looking at h5 pawn and also the bishop is hanging. This is already winning position for white. So Raunak played here h6 carefully, so that first of all knight g5 is stopped, and if you go h5, he will respond to it by g5. c3, bishop f7, queen to b3, queen c8, and now white played the move c4. You see how Caruana is actually putting pressure. He's not wasting time in castling here, let's say short castle or long castle. He sees that he has the initiative and he tries to push his opponent. c6, cd, and now came bishop to d5. Already here, before cd, I was thinking maybe c5 is a much better move perhaps, because you just move your queen later on and play b4 b5, and it's very one-sided position. It's very difficult to get in the e5 break, and therefore it'll be like white is playing with b4 b5 and black would be passive. So cd5 was not bad, of course. Bishop d5, bishop c4 takes, queen takes, and now the queen is threatening to enter here on e6. Also black cannot castle easily, whereas white also has a very strong pawn structure in the center. Things look pretty bleak for Raunak, but he's a fighter. He played knight to b6, queen b3, and now knight d5. So blocking this diagonal and preparing short castles. Knight was played to e5. The point being that if you take the bishop, queen f7 is already winning for white. So he took. I was also considering that instead of knight e5, Fabi could have played bishop e5, when after castles, bishop g7, king g7, knight e5, white has a nice edge. But okay, black is fighting here. It's not like game over or anything. But knight e5, bishop e5, and castles. Whew. So this is getting interesting. Black has a knight, white has a bishop. So who is better here? In my opinion, it's white, because first of all, white has a very nice structure, no visible weaknesses. Black has weaknesses on e6. Also his kingside pawns are slightly weak, soft. White could play h5 and start to break those pawns. Also this knight can always be pushed back with f3 e4, while the bishop on e5 is very solid. So in all of these things kept in mind, you realize that white is better, but it's not so easy to understand how white should take advantage. Fabi continued naturally with castles. He wants to now play f3 e4, and he thought that his king being on g1 would be much better. King h7, rook a e1, and now came a fighter's move. Like usually in such positions, weaker players go wrong, because the ball is in your court now. What to do? Should you play queen d7? Should you try and play a5? There are many possibilities in this position, but Raunak went for the move h5, and although maybe objectively it's not the best move, it's a very fighting move. The point being that you don't want to allow white to play h5 and you just close that option. It does create weaknesses, but it's something where Raunak says, I'll live with it. I'll live with those weaknesses. f3, queen d7, queen c2. Well, immediate e4, although looks tempting, may not be the best idea. Black may just drop back his knight, and well, the game continues. Like if you take ef, then I take back gf, and yes, white is better, and perhaps this is also a very viable way of playing. But what Fabi did was not bad. He played queen c2, and now knight went back to f6. Of course, playing e4 now makes no sense, because after takes knight to g4, the knight gets a very nice outpost, and suddenly the stability in the center starts to, get wobbly. So maybe rook f2 with the idea of rook e2, slowly and steadily building up the position, might have been better. Caruana played b4. And I see all of you wondering, at the start of the video you had said it's a 13-point quiz. You haven't asked us any questions yet. Where is the quiz? Well guys, it's time to begin now with the first question. This one is black to move here. You are in Raunak's shoes. Your opponent has put you under pressure right from the word go, and it's your turn now to fight back. What do you play here as black? Okay, all those who mentioned the move a5, well done. Fantastic move. It takes advantage of Caruana's last move b4, and you want to break open another sector in the board, because clearly the king side over here, the king side and the center is clearly in white's favor. Black is unable to do much, but the queen side now suddenly starts to get opened up. So rook into a5, queen f2, maybe not the most accurate move. Queen b3, rook b5, queen a3 would have been a better way to continue, but queen f2, and now Raunak doubled on the a2 pawn. You can see how he's creating play. Rook e2, and now came queen e6, again putting more pressure here on the a2 pawn. White went rook b1, b5, rook b2, and now knight to d5. The next move played was rook b3, and here's your second point. Can you play better than what Raunak did in the game? It's black to move. Okay, so here there's a clearly a very nice move in the position. Raunak played the move c5, which turns out to be a mistake, and he lands in an inferior position. He should have played the move b4, and this is the move that would get you a full point. The idea is, of course, to jump into c3 with the knight and then pick up this pawn, and also you want to play c5 at the right moment. Yeah, and the point is that directly c5 is met with e4, but if you would have played b4, then e4 makes no sense because of knight c3, here attacking the rook and also the a2 pawn. So c5, e4, good move by Fabi, fe, and now Raunak made a mistake here. He played his knight to b4, which is logical in a way, because he didn't want to play knight f6. White can just take and play dc5, and he would be pawn up and clearly pressing in this position. So Raunak said, I'll put my knight away from this bishop's scope, and at the same time now he cannot take because his bishop on e5 is hanging. Well, turns out that the knight is too far away from the king, and so the rook jumps over to f3, and now threatening a deadly check on f7. Black quickly comes back, king to g8, and now is your next point. For the third point in this position, it's white to move now. It's Fabiano's move. How do you finish off the game? Well, there's only one move which wins here, and if you were alert, you would have found this move. It's not difficult at all. Just you need to notice the weaknesses. This is a really weak square, and white could have got in with queen e3, threatening to come to h6, and you had to actually look at a line which was not so simple. The line went cd, okay, queen h6, queen takes e5, queen g6, queen g7, queen e6 check, the only sort of moves for both sides. And now if king h7, I guess rook f7 is also sufficient here to win the game. But king h8, and now here comes your fourth point in the game. How should white win this position? And this is really not easy. You have sacrificed a piece, you have been able to break through to some extent, but it's not over yet. So how should white break through here? White to move. Well, all those who said rook f7, well, it's not the best move for the simple reason that rook phi a6 is very powerful attacking the queen, and white has to play something like queen e7, knight c6. It's a big line here with rook g7, knight d7, rook d7, rook a2, when white clearly holds the edge, but maybe this is going to end in a draw. The right move here was rook to f5. Well done if you spotted this move. This would net you the fourth point in the game, and this is leading to a forced mate on h5. There's no way to defend it. Let's say rook a2, rook h5, queen h7, takes, rook takes on h7, king h7, queen e7, and you pick up the knight on b4. White wins. So queen e3 was definitely a quick finish for Fabi, but he played queen g3, and now it's your turn to play here. How do you defend this position? There's only one move to defend. Fifth point, can you defend it? Black to move. Very good if you spotted the move queen to g4, stopping the queen, and if queen f2 back, then you come back here. Very strong move now for the sixth point. Black to move here. What do you play? Because you remember, if you come back, say queen e6, then queen e3 is already winning. So you need to play something else. Yes, well done if you spotted knight c6. Knight c6 is the brilliant move. For the sixth point, you're threatening to take this bishop, and if rook g3, here comes the point, which is knight into e5. Rook g4, knight takes g4, when black has sufficient compensation for the queen and the game is around equal. You know, if after knight e5, if you play de, then I can just play queen e6. Once again, everything is under control. Queen e6 was strong. So Raunak played cd4, which was not good because queen g4 was clearly strong. He played cd4, and now again for Fabi to play, white to move. For the seventh point here, what's your move? What's your move? See, there are a lot of mistakes happening in the game, but that is expected in a blitz game. We are using this game to improve our calculation, to improve our attacking skills and defensive skills as well. So here, after cd4, what do you play? Yeah, Caruana played bishop d4, which was not the best move. We'll come to black's defense soon. The right move here was rook ef2. And now for your eighth point here, what should white play in this position? Now this is the brilliant point of the game. Take your time, try to think how should white finish off his opponent. Rook f6, brilliant move. I think Caruana didn't spot this, and after this it's all over. g6 pawn is falling. You can't go queen g4 because of rook g6, and then you lose the queen. So he has to take now queen g6, and there are two moves. King h8 loses to bishop f6, king f8 loses to rook f6, and it's all over. So rook ef2 and rook f6 were very important moves to be found. bd4 was played, and now find black's only defense for the ninth point here. Ninth point. Well, Raunak played the move here, rook takes a2, which turned out to be a mistake. Instead, he should have played knight to c6. And the point here is very clear that after rook f6, which is the main move in such positions, ef6, queen g6, You go king f8. King h8 of course loses to bishop f6. But you go king f8 and now a check, knight e7, e5. And once again, this is for your 10th point in the position. What should black play? Black is under a lot of pressure. He has to do something. Queen to f7. Brilliant defensive move. Brilliant defensive move. Somehow this saves the day. For example, if you were to play rook into a2, then after e into f6, it's already game over. Because bishop e7 is threatened. There is hardly any moves here. Like rook e2, for example. I play fe7. And now it's a mate. So you must take with the queen. Queen f6. King e8. Bishop e7. Rook to e7. And queen c6. Picking up the rook on a8. So that doesn't serve the purpose. But queen f7 is the right move. And after queen h6, king g8, bishop e7, queen e7, e into f6, queen c5, king h2, rook a7. Somehow black is surviving. He was under tremendous pressure, too much stress, but black's position holds here, and this is how Raunak could have defended. Instead, he took on a2, and now white to move for the 11th point. This one, I think the theme you already know. How should white win here? Well, I am a bit surprised that Caruana missed this move. Rook f6 here. You know, I believe that he had seen this move, but he thought that it's almost the same. Like I play it now, or I take on a2 and then play it. It wouldn't matter much. But as it turns out, that both the moves have a slight difference. In the game, he took on a2. And after knight a2, rook f6, still winning, but now queen e4 is possible. You remember, if the rook was on e2, it was impossible to take the pawn, and Raunak would have had to resign, because after rook f6, ef6, queen g6, king h8 loses to bishop f6, and king f8 loses to bishop c5 check with a mate coming up. So rook a2, knight takes a2, rook f6, queen e4, and now rook g6, and black king starts to run away. I don't think Raunak had big hopes from his position at this point. He has been under pressure throughout the game, but he's fighting hard. You know, check, king e6, bishop c5, rook e8. Still hoping, you know, that some miracle will happen. Queen b3 check, queen c4. Maybe stronger here was rook g6 check, king d7, and queen h3. There are perhaps several lines, but here with these three pieces, white will conduct a deadly mating attack. Queen b3 allowed queen c4, queen e3 check, king d5, and now queen g5 check was strong. He played instead rook g5, and e5 would have given black already an advantage, you see. But Raunak played king c6, and now came white's move. This is for your 12th point, the penultimate point. What should white play here in order to win? Well, queen f3 check is the best move here, and this is just winning completely, because after you move the king, you just move your bishop away, and now with the rook moving into c5 and these two pieces all ready to join the attack, I think it wouldn't take time for white to win this. So queen f3 check was critical. Instead, he played bishop a7, Caruana, and now last point, you need to save yourself, because rook c5 check is coming up. What to do? Black to move. And you get the full point if you found the move. Queen c1, check, exchanges the queen. And another subtle point is that here you cannot win a piece, because king b7 attacks the bishop as well if you take the knight. So in that way, Raunak actually wriggled out from the mess. Knight e2 check, king f2. It's now around even position, but he even managed to stun Caruana from here. Bishop e3, knight d5, bishop c1, e4. He's using the e pawn, e3, king e2, rook g8, rook g5, rook f8, bishop d4 check, king e1, rook c2, king c6, and king d7, rook g7, king e6. And now came the final mistake of the game, rook to g6. Instead, if rook g3, b4, bishop e3, b3, bishop d4, b2, white has to sacrifice his bishop, but this is a theoretically drawn position. Both players would have had to agree to a draw soon. But rook g6 was a mistake because it allowed the king to move forward. Check was maybe what Fabi had on his mind, but after king e4, he's threatening the bishop and also to penetrate with king d3. And so rook g8, king e4, rook g4 check, king d3, and now rook c1 checkmate cannot be stopped. Let's say one option is king d1, e2, king e1, rook c1, king f2, and a queen, and that is game over. Brilliant play by Raunak here. More than actually showing some great ideas, what he did was he kept fighting right till the bitter end. You know, he gave his opponent no chances. He was worse from the opening, but he stood his ground even against such a great player as Caruana. And after, when he started getting the play with a5, he didn't wait. You know, he struck back, and it was a brilliant game. So those were the 13 positions that were 13 points that were offered to you. Please let me know in the comment section as to how well you did. It was not easy. It was a very subtle balance between attack and defense, where only one move was winning for both sides or defending for both sides. And I'm glad that Raunak managed to beat Caruana. That's the thing about these youngsters in Indian chess. They believe they can beat just about anyone, and it's such a pleasure to see their games. Raunak, well done, congratulations, and we look forward to many more such wins from you. This is Sagar Shah signing off. See you soon. Goodbye.